That's how Sam and Elaine start every single English Disco Lovers radio show. And it seems a perfect way to start this talk. We are the English Disco Lovers, and so are you. But who are the English Disco Lovers? Well, for those of you who don't know, let me tell you. My name is Alton, and I founded the group in September 2012 with the intention of reclaiming the EDL acronym, most commonly associated with the English Defence League. I wanted to subvert the meaning of that acronym, making it more synonymous with disco than defence. More synonymous with a message of love, rather than a message of hate. So having been raised as a Quaker, that subversive response seemed entirely natural to me. Quakers are known for putting their faith into action and addressing society and its current issues. They do this fighting with what Quakerism's founder George Fox called weapons of the spirit. These spiritual weapons heal rather than destroy, and include things like love, non-violence, humour, imagination, and in this instance, disco. Why disco? That's something people often ask me. They say, couldn't you be in NED? Why aren't you English dubstep lovers? Or English duvet lovers? And the preconception that disco lacks a political edge is understandable. As Dorian Lynskey put it in his Guardian article, How Disco Dancing Aims to Crush the EDL, the late 70s disco boom coincided with surging popularity for the National Front and the musical counterattack of Rock Against Racism. But there was little overlap. Rock Against Racism called for now music, crisis music, music that knows who the real enemy is, which meant punk and reggae, not the seemingly cheerful hedonism of disco. So you might be surprised to learn that the roots of disco as a musical sign of resistance against fascism run deep. And as an artist, my work often involves methodical digging and the reconfiguration of that which I unearth. I've played ping pong in competition with aggressive architecture. I've washed national flags together, letting their colours bleed and viewing each with a part of the other. And I've made work about a 1960s rock and roll band called Trident, who were briefly managed by the non-domiciled billionaire Michael Ashcroft, who made headlines recently due to allegations he levelled at the Prime Minister regarding his unsavoury antics. I'm not talking about the pig. Working with a band called New Manhattan, who you see up there, we've made posters, photographs, and even music looping references to Britain's colonial history, tax havens, and tax avoidance into the visual and linguistic materials surrounding the imagined band. Whilst conducting research for English Disco Lovers, I focused on the history and etymology of disco and found that the word discotheque appeared perhaps for the first time in Nazi-occupied Paris during the Second World War. You see, the Nazis deemed jazz music to be degenerate due to its affiliations with black and Jewish people. Subsequently, they sought to discourage, discredit, or ban it entirely. And when Paris was occupied, jazz went underground as an act of defiance. People would go to these secret underground cafes and they'd listen to recordings because live performances were deemed to be too risky. And in these secret cafes, you have walls and walls of records, and these places became known as record libraries, which translates into French as discotheque. So that's a very early example of the discotheque being a site of resistance against fascism. They were very popular with a group known as Les Jajus. And Les Jajus, they were like the Parisian equivalent of punks or teddy boys. They probably got their name from the song Zazuzah by Cab Calloway, the black Jewish, no, not Jewish, black jazz musician, famous for Minnie the Moocher. And despite being targeted by fascist bully boy groups, Les Jajus flagrantly defied Nazism using music and fashion. Male Jajus wore zouzus cut off at the knee to reveal their brightly coloured socks, sculpted their hair into grand quiffs, and wore shoes with triple high soles. Female Jajus wore short skirts, shabby furs, and wore big glasses with dark lenses. They'd often go hatless to reveal the single lock of hair that they bleached or dyed. And as an act of solidarity and subversion, they'd wear the yellow Star of David the Jews were forced to wear, but with the word swing written across the middle. So whilst the precise etymology of discotheque remains shrouded in the mists of history, we know that the idea of an intimate underground record club exists thanks to the jazz-loving youths that defied the Third Reich. So, 3 decades later, in 1970s America, the discotheque was once again a site of musical resistance, populated by black, Latin, and homosexual people, marginalized subcultures. A message of unity began to grow. A message of self-expression began to grow out of the music. The first disco track I remember hearing was You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, which was by Sylvester. It was on the soundtrack of Milk, a biopic about Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man elected to public office in the United States of America. Now, Sylvester was a gender-mixing, falsetto-singing, black, openly gay man diva, and he and Milk, they were often seen at the same gay parades and parties, and their affinity illustrates how integral dance music was to the gay rights movement of that time. It's been said that every movement must have its music, and the gay movement made disco its own, with a sound that declared, "We are family." At this revolution you danced. However, in 1979, there was a campaign called Disco Sucks, which scapegoated the genre and made it a target for racism and homophobia. On July 2nd, a man named Steve Dahl, a Chicago radio DJ, organised a rally called Disco Demolition Night, held during the halftime period of a baseball match. Dahl invited people to bring along disco records, which he would blow up. And at halftime, he came out onto the pitch in army fatigue, struck a lap of honour, and then before detonating the crate, he boomed into the microphone. "This is now the world's largest anti-disco rally. Now listen, we've got all the records you brought in a giant box, and we're going to blow them up real good." Then in an action that could only be likened to Nazi book burning, he detonated the crate. Thousands of people rushed the pitch and proceeded to tear apart the batting cage and light a bonfire in the centre. It took the Chicago police kitted out in full riot gear to disperse the crowds. So when I say that disco has always been tied to politics, I hope you'll agree with me. And whilst English disco lovers could have been NED, disco is a poignant, if not surprising, choice. We build upon that history of disco as a site of musical resistance against fascism, and we redeploy it in opposition to contemporary fascism. As I mentioned earlier, English Disco Lovers was founded with the intention of reclaiming the EDL acronym most commonly associated with the English Defence League. That campaign began online, on social media, where I shared memes like this. Don't hide your faces any longer. Come and join the disco conga. Fewer xenophobes, more disco strobes. And don't listen to Nazi sympathisers. Dance along to synthesizers. So, as our social media following grew, we were approached by a web developer called Ian, and he offered to build our website for free. You see, when I first founded the group, one of the core ideas was to become the most popular EDL, and one of the ways of measuring that, I thought, okay, I want to be the top search result on Google for EDL. Obviously, we needed a website for that. Thanks, Ian. But the website launched in February 2013, and thanks to coverage in The Guardian's G2, we quickly leapt into the top 10 search results, and by September 2013, we were number 1. All of that online energy had quickly translated into English disco lovers on the streets, at counter-English Defence League demonstrations, bedecked in their finest disco gear, dancing, laughing, and singing along to disco classics like Chic's I Want Your Love. You see, where the English Defence League tries to spread a message of hate, we combat it with a message of defiant love. That's reflected in our motto, don't hate, gyrate. So I'm now going to show you a very quick, well, I don't know how quick it is, a minute and a half of video, and it's from a protest that took place here in Brighton in April 2013. into something that exists independently from the English Defence League. We've begun to hold our own events, disco nights, in aid of various causes including anti-racism, LGBT and refugee charities. We've held nights across the UK in cities including Manchester, London, and of course Brighton. Brighton has quickly become one of the cities where we are most active, and it's provided the hub for a new project run by the fantastic Brighton disco lover, Elaine Ortiz. So, the Hummingbird Project was founded in response to the ongoing refugee crisis, and it brings aid to the men, women and children living in the camps around Calais. At a time when our government, national media and organisations like the English Defence League are doing all they can to demonise and dehumanise those people, those human beings, it's vital that we extend a message of love and solidarity. They're human beings just like us, and they deserve the love and respect afforded to all people. So, in the same way that Les Jajus stood in subversive solidarity with Jews during the Second World War, and in tribute to the message of unity that grew out of the 1970s discotheques of America, English Disco Lovers is an EDL that welcomes all people, regardless of colour, regardless of sexuality, and regardless of religion. We are the English Disco Lovers, and if you choose to be, so are you. Thank you.